Welcome to another episode of Be Wise Media and Cess Talk Sports presents Sheryl Swoopes, the original disruptor, your go-to podcast for diving deep into the intersections of sports, politics, culture, and advocacy. And I'm Cess, your favorite auntie with Uncle Tendencies, along with my co-host Political Lil. Today, we're bringing you a very special poly sports perspective and one of the original trailblazers and disruptors in women's basketball, the legendary Sheryl Swoopes. Sheryl Swoopes isn't just a name etched in the history books. She's a pioneer who redefined what it means to be a woman, particularly a black woman in professional sports. From her early days on the court to becoming the first player signed to the WNBA, her journey has been nothing short of extraordinary.
That's right. Suze didn't just play the game, she changed it. She challenged the status quo in women's sports, breaking barriers on and off the court and paving the way for generations of athletes we see today. But it wasn't just about basketball stats and trophies. Cheryl Swoops was and continues to be a disruptor and an advocate. She used her platform to push representation, equality, and visibility, not just for women in sports, but for all marginalized groups of people.
And that's what we're diving into today. In this episode, we'll explore Swoop's groundbreaking career, her fearless advocacy for black women and LGBTQ plus representation, and the enduring legacy she's left behind. We'll also reflect on the challenges she faced, the progress women's basketball has made since her time, and the work that still lies ahead. So, whether you're a longtime fan of women's basketball or just curious about the pioneers who shaped the game, this episode is for you. Stay tuned because by the end of today's discussion, you'll have a deeper appreciation for why Sheryl Swoopes isn't just a player to remember, she's a force to be reckoned with. Let's get started.
Cheryl Swoops is widely recognized as one of the most influential figures in women's basketball. She is often referred to as the female Michael Jordan due to her dominant style of play and her revolutionary presence in the sport. At Texas Tech, Swoops led the Lady Raiders to their first NCAA championship in 1993. In her senior season, she averaged over 28 points a game and scored 47 points in the NCAA championship game, setting a record that still stands. In 1997, Swoops became the first player to sign with the newly established Women's National Basketball Association. This made her the league's founding face, symbolizing the potential for women basketball as a professional sport. During her career with the Houston Comets, Swoops won four consecutive WNBA championships from 1997 to 2000, three MVP titles, and three Defensive Player of the Year awards. She also became the first player in history to record a triple double in both the regular season and playoffs. Beyond her athletic accolades, Swoop broke new ground by becoming the first openly LGBTQ plus athlete in a professional American sport. She used her platform to challenge stereotypes and advocate for black women athletes. Through her career and personal journey, Sue set a precedent for black women to be unapologetically themselves in a predominantly white and male dominant sports culture. When Swoops began her professional career, women basketball was still fighting for visibility and respect. The WNBA was founded in 1996, just after the U.S. women's national basketball team won gold at the Atlanta Olympics, which helped bring mainstream attention to the women's sport. However, this attention often excluded black women who face unique barriers. Before the WNBA, American women basketball players had limited professional opportunities and often went overseas to play. Even with the WNBA's founding, women athletes, especially black women, struggle for media attention, sponsorship, and financial stability.
Political Ill, can you speak to the many challenges specific to black women in basketball and how this interacted with the career of Sheryl Swoopes?
Yes, like athletes today, stereotypes and racial bias existed in Cheryl Swoop's early career, still exist in women's basketball. Because black women in basketball face deep rooted racial and gender stereotypes that shape how they were viewed by the media and the fans. They were often stereotyped as too aggressive, too physical, in contrast to the feminine image promoted in women's sport. These twin biases are still prevalent today. Black women also endured underrepresentation. Black women athletes were rarely promoted as the face of the sport, even though they were often some of the top performers. Sheryl Swoopes changed this by being one of the first black women athletes who became the face of a major league in the US. Black women athletes were frequently overlooked by sponsors who chose to endorse white athletes, believing they were more marketable. Swoopes challenged this narrative, eventually securing endorsements, including a groundbreaking Nike deal that led to the release of her own signature shoe, the Air Swoop, the first ever signature shoe for a woman. As a visible black woman athlete excelling in a new and prestigious league, Swoops inspired young black girls to see themselves as professional in professional sports. Her presence showed that black women could not only participate but excel and lead in spaces where they were traditionally marginalized. Swoops was also a cultural icon and an advocate who opened doors for black women in sports and challenged the status quo.
Let's dive into Sheryl Swoopes' background and her early achievements, which laid the foundation for her career as a trailblazer in women's basketball. Sheryl Swoopes was born on March 25th, 1971, in Brownfield, Texas, a small, predominantly black town with limited resources and few opportunities for young athletes, especially girls. Raised by a single mother, Swoopes grew up with three older brothers, and her early years were marked by resilience and determination. Swoop's introduction to basketball came through her older brothers, who often played pickup games in their community. Being the only girl, she was frequently underestimated, but she was fiercely competitive. Playing alongside her brothers and their friends helped her build physical and mental toughness, as she soon began outshining her peers. Basketball became both her passion and her escape, fueling her drive to excel. Swoops attended Brownfield High School, where she quickly became a standout on the basketball team. Her talent was undeniable, but being from a small town with limited visibility, Swoops didn't initially attract much attention from college scouts. Despite this, her determination to pursue a basketball career never wavered. After initially attending South Plains College, a junior college, Swoops transferred to Texas Tech University. This was a pivotal move for her, as Texas Tech had a strong women's basketball program and provided her the platform to showcase her talent on the national stage. By the time she joined, Swoops was already recognized as one of the most skilled players in women's college basketball. During her senior year at Texas Tech, Swoops achieved one of the greatest seasons in NCAA history. She averaged 28 points per game and broke multiple scoring records. In the 1993 NCAA championship game, Swoops scored 47 points, a record for both men and women's NCAA championship games, leading Texas to victory and capturing the national title. This extraordinary performance solidified her reputation as an elite athlete. Swoops was named an All American, and her dominance earned her the 1993 Naismith College Player of the Year and the Wade Trophy, prestigious awards recognizing her as the best player in women's college basketball. Her ability to lead her team, combined with her scoring prowess, elevated her to national prominence. This visibility was a game changer, especially as a black woman, breaking barriers in the often overlooked world of women's college sports. Political Lil, can you discuss the first disruptor moment, which was challenging preconceptions?
Yes, leading Texas Tech to an NCAA championship, Swoops proved that black women could not only participate at the highest level, but could also dominate. Her achievements challenged stereotypes that black women athletes were too physical and too aggressive to be marketable in women's sports, showcasing instead her skill, finesse, and versatility of black athletes in a new light. Swoops also broke through media barriers. Swoops' performance and media visibility were groundbreaking because it was rare for a black woman to receive such attention in women's college basketball. Her NCAA championship performance was widely covered by national media, introducing her as the new era of women's sports. One of the black athletes could be celebrated for their excellence. Swoops inspired a generation whose achievements at Texas Tech sent ripples through the sport world, inspiring young black girls who had not seen someone who looked like them reach such heights in college sports. Her first big disruptor moment paved the way for her to later challenge structures in the WNBA, redefine what women's sports could look like, and become an advocate for equal representation. This was due to her relentless drive and her first steps towards dismantling barriers in sport. With these achievements, Swoops began to began her path as a disruptor in a white dominated landscape of American sports. Cess, let's talk about Sheryl Swoopes' move from college phenom to consummate pro as the first WNBA pioneer and first signed player.
Well, the WNBA was founded in 1996, a landmark moment for women's sports. It was the first time a women's professional basketball league had the backing of the NBA, and it brought with it a sense of legitimacy and opportunity that hadn't been available before. The league represented hope and the potential for women athletes to pursue basketball as a full time career without going overseas. Sheryl Swoopes was the very first player signed to the WNBA in 1997, becoming the face of this new league. This was a powerful statement. The WNBA wasn't just looking for talent, they were looking for a leader, someone who represented excellence and was capable of inspiring a new generation. By choosing Swoopes, a black woman, as the league's foundational figure, the WNBA was making a statement about inclusivity and diversity, and it had an immediate impact. Signing generated immediate excitement and media attention, bringing widespread visibility to the league and signaling that women's basketball was poised for a major moment in the sports world. Swoops attracted fans and sponsors and set the tone for what women's professional basketball could be in America. Her presence encouraged other elite athletes to join, solidifying the league's early years with a strong base of talent. Swoops was a trailblazer as a black woman leading the WNBA. She was navigating a sports culture that had historically marginalized black female athletes. She faced racial and gender biases from media and sponsors who, in the past, often prioritized white athletes. Swoops, however, broke through these biases with her undeniable skill and competitive spirit, forcing the industry to recognize black women's contributions to sports. Swoops' role as a WNBA pioneer gave black girls and young women a role model at the highest level of professional basketball. For the first time, black female athletes had someone they could relate to and look up to in the national spotlight. She inspired future stars like Candace Parker, Maya Moore, and Asia Wilson, paving the way for them to feel entitled to equal recognition in sport. Swoop's success pushed back against racial and gender stereotypes. Her success contradicted the notion that only white women could serve as the face of women's sports, and her influence helped normalize the visibility of black athletes in prominent leadership roles within women's sports. Swoops was known for her versatile game, and she could drive to the basket with force, shoot from long range, and lock down opponents on defense. Her style was often described as aggressive and intense, which broke the traditional expectations of women's sports at the time, where female athletes were often expected to play with finesse rather than power. Swoops was a defensive powerhouse, winning 3 Defensive Player of the Year titles, and her offensive skill earned her 3 MVP awards. She set a standard in the WNBA that all around excellence was achievable and expected. Her ability to both score and defend was a model for future players who wanted to emulate her well-rounded game. Supes achieved the first triple double in WNBA history, demonstrating her ability to excel in every aspect of the game. This achievement underlined her as a complete player, not only a scorer, but a team leader who could contribute on every front, whether it was passing, scoring, or defense. Supes' style and versatility has influenced the modern game and inspired the next generation of WNBA players to adopt a similarly aggressive approach. Her play style redefined what was possible in the women's game, showcasing that women could play with a level of athleticism and intensity on par with men's basketball. It shifted public perception about what it meant to be a women's basketball player. Her presence and her playing style established a new standard, challenging the white power structure, and set a strong precedent for black women in professional sports. Political Ill, can you speak on her social advocacy and challenges?
Absolutely. Sheryl Swoopes' social advocacy and her willingness to speak openly about her experiences set her apart as a trailblazer beyond her accomplishments on the court. We have a detailed look at her role as an advocate, her navigation of complex personal identities, and the racial challenges she faced. Swoops was an outspoken advocate for fair treatment and representation of black women in sports. She actively used her platform to raise awareness about the lack of representation of black women in coaching, leadership, and sports media. She spoke out about the structural barriers black women face, not only in gaining visibility, but also in securing endorsement deals, promotional opportunities that were more readily offered to her white counterparts. Swoops pushed for equal pay and better funding within the WNBA, calling attention to pay disparities between men and women's leagues, and particularly how this affected Black women who had far fewer endorsement deals and sponsorship opportunities. Her advocacy wasn't just about herself, but aimed to uplift other Black athletes and ensure future generations had better opportunities. Throughout her career and after retirement, Swoops has remained committed to mentoring young Black athletes. She has she's been an outspoken supporter of initiatives that increase access to sports programs for underprivileged communities, and she encouraged young Black athletes to use their voice to fight for equality. Her mentorship wave paved the way for younger athletes to become vocal advocates for social justice, equality, and representation. Cess, can you speak on her navigation of gender, race, and sexuality issues and about the groundbreaking by coming out publicly?
Sure. In 2005, Swoops made headlines as one of the first professional athletes to come out publicly, revealing her relationship with another woman. This was a bold move in an era when LGBTQ plus issues were rarely discussed in the sports world, let alone by Black athletes. By being open about her sexuality, she disrupted traditional stereotypes surrounding athletes and showed that LGBTQ plus athletes could be visible, successful, and celebrated. As a Black woman who was both an LGBTQ plus advocate and an outspoken feminist, Soups faced unique challenges. She had to navigate intersectional barriers where her identity as a Black, female, and queer athlete intersected with the biases she faced in each of these areas. She often confronted pushback both from within and outside of the sports community, facing stereotypes about Black women, assumptions about women's basketball players, and biases against LGBTQ plus individuals. Sue's decision to come out was transformative for the LGBTQ plus community in sports, particularly with women's sports. Her bravery in addressing her identity paved the way for her greater acceptance and support for LGBTQ plus athletes, especially Black athletes who often felt compelled to hide aspects of their identity due to cultural stigmas. Despite her achievements, Soups frequently faced biased portrayals in the media. While she was undeniably one of the most talented players in the WNBA, media outlets often prioritized stories about her white counterparts. Soups was sometimes cast as too competitive, too aggressive, labels that, when applied to Black athletes, tend to carry racial undertones. These portrayals often limited the media's portrayal of her as a complete player in person. While Swoops broke records and made history, she frequently found herself overshadowed by white players who received more consistent media attention and endorsements. Even though she was the face of the WNBA's early days, the league's marketing often didn't highlight her to the same extent as it did with other athletes, a trend that many Black athletes continue to face today. This was a source of frustration for Swoops, who believed that her accomplishments deserve fair recognition and that Black athletes should not be minimized in favor of maintaining mainstream appeal. Swoop's ability to remain resilient in the face of racial challenges, media bias, and personal adversity solidified her role as a disruptor in the sports world. She refused to be silenced or conform to the narrow roles society expected of her, consistently advocating for equality and using her voice to highlight issues often ignored by the mainstream sports media. Her resilience and outspokenness helped shift perceptions and pave the way for other athletes to embrace their true selves, advocate for social change, and continue to fight for equal representation in sports. Sheryl Swoopes' legacy reaches far beyond her achievements on the court, as she has become a symbol of empowerment and a source of inspiration for future generations. Here's a detailed look at her lasting impact and the ways she continues to shape sports world. Political Ill, can you speak on her legacy beyond the court, her influence on future generations, and how she's paving the way for today's stars?
Yes, Swoop's trailblazing career has directly influenced and inspired Black women in basketball today, including stars like Aja Wilson, Dawn Stanley, and Angel Reese. Her success and outspokenness created a blueprint for how Black women athletes could navigate professional sports. By remaining authentic and unafraid to use her voice. By breaking through social barriers, Swoops allowed athletes to follow in her footsteps, both in terms of athletic excellence and in advocating for equality. Swoops' example has emboldened players to carve out their own unique brands and pursue careers on their own terms. Her willingness to embrace and publicly discuss her identity encouraged athletes like Angel Reese and Aja Wilson to openly celebrate their blackness, be unapologetically themselves, challenging societal expectations about how Black women should behave or present themselves. Additionally, Swoop set the tone for minor athletes to use their platform for advocacy. Today's WNBA players often engage in activism around racial justice, gender equality, and LGBTQ plus rights, directly following the path Swoops have helped to create. Her influence has helped make social advocacy a norm in the WNBA, encouraging players to leverage their visibility to create change. Looking at her off court activism and current role, Swoops has remained an active advocate for diversity in sport, working to uplift Black athletes through mentorship and public speaking. She encourages young athletes to push for inclusion, advocating for diversity in hiring practices, coaching, and media representation. Her current work involves guiding young players and helping them navigate the challenges she once faced, from handling media scrutiny to managing the pressure of being a visible Black athlete in a predominantly white industry. As a vocal advocate who's continued to address inequality in the sports world, including issues related to pay disparity, resources for women's sports, and the lack of Black women in coaching and executive positions. She speaks out on these issues to create a fairer playing field, not only for Black athletes but for all women in sports, using her voice to push systemic change. Swoops frequently speaks on the importance of resilience, self belief, and community support. She aims to instill confidence in young athletes, particularly those who may feel isolated or underrepresented, showing them that they too can succeed and affect change. Cess, can you speak about her enduring legacy and recognition?
Sure, Swoop's induction into the Hall of Fame in 2016 solidified her status as one of the greatest players in basketball history. This recognition serves as a testament to her extraordinary talent, her transformative impact on women's basketball, and her role as a pioneer for Black women athletes. The Hall of Fame honor also recognizes her resilience and leadership in breaking down racial and gender barriers, ensuring her contributions to the game are permanently celebrated. Swoop's legacy as the Michael Jordan of women's basketball underscores her role as a symbol of excellence, tenacity, and courage. Her achievements and advocacy efforts have been critical in shaping the evolution of the WNBA and women's sports as a whole, as she continues to be celebrated as an icon who made a lasting impact on the game. Swoops has laid a foundation that continues to benefit new generations of players, particularly Black female athletes who see themselves in her journey. Her legacy is reflected not only in her own accomplishments, but in the increased visibility and opportunities now available for women in sports, a reality she helped to create through her dedication and advocacy. Sheryl Swoopes has made profound and lasting changes. She has sparked in the world of women's basketball and beyond. In the end, Sheryl Swoopes has an incredible impact on women's basketball. With her groundbreaking achievements on the court and her role as a trailblazer off the court, Swoopes challenged traditional structures in the sports industry, breaking barriers for Black women in an overwhelmingly white and male dominated field. We invite listeners to share their thoughts on social media or in the comments, reflecting on the themes discussed and how Swoop's legacy has impacted their view of women's sports. Take the time to consider ways you can support and uplift Black female athletes, whether by following their careers, advocating for their representation, or supporting brands that sponsor and promote. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Cess Talk Sports and Be Wise Polysports podcast. If you enjoyed today's discussion, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And remember, sports are never just about the game. It's about the stories we tell and the change we create. And be sure to join us in our next episode where we discuss disruptor Katrina McClain, her impact on women's hoops, and how she became an award in this game. Until then, y'all stay tuned. Talk soon. We out.